One of the questions that came about, Maharaj, was that there's so many religious books either in India or outside India. But what makes the Bhāgavatam significantly more important than any of those religious books?
Well, if we take it from the Bhāgavatam itself, Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nittam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shlokir bhaktir bhavati naishtiki tada rajastamo bhavo kama lobha dayaste. So the material world is a place where Kamini, Kanak, and Pratishta preside. And the purpose of the Bhagavatam, which differentiates it from any other scripture, is that it frees us from these three particular anomalies which bind the jiva to the material world. So that's from the negative side, eliminating the obstacles. And then from the positive side, it's the glorification, the supreme glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is a person. So who is that person? So in Christianity, you'll have the conception that it's good, gives some tendency or understanding of sacrifice and so forth. But it eliminates the fact that there's a spirit soul within every living being. So there's no respect given to other living entities. There's an abuse, which is based on these principles of Kamini, Kanak, and Pratishta. Exploitation. And then ultimately the Bhagavatam glorifies who? Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it gives in detail who is Krishna, where does he reside, what are his activities, who his mother is, who his father is, who his friends are, who his lovers are. And in the ultimate issue, we have the Supreme companion of Sri Krishna, Srimati Radharani. And the Bhagavatam, as it has been said, that every letter of the Bhagavatam actually refers to Srimati Radharani, although Sukadeva Goswami never spoke her name in the assembly of all of the personalities of who were gathered here at this particular place 5,000 years ago. And whatever was spoken, I mean, the Bhagavatam also manifested because Narada, understanding the dissatisfaction of Vyasadeva, right, who compiled all the different Vedic literatures, and he said, and ultimately he said, why have you wasted your time with all of this knowledge? Because the purpose actually is to understand, of knowledge is to understand who you are and who is God and what is your relationship with God. Who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So in no other literature, if you compare it, if you make a comparison, there is no other literature that gives such a detailed analysis of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? So that's what is a specific characteristic of the Bhagavatam. But even many of the pastimes and the stories in the Bhagavatam are not, as Srila Śrīpada Maharāja said, are not really so important. But what is important is actually when you get down to who is Krishna and his pastimes in Vrindavan, and those pastimes and that personality is the supreme manifestation of Godhead, right? So, and you can just make a comparison of any of the other major religions in the world and what information do they have about God. You can make a comparison. You can find it's very scanty in relationship to the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And that this came about not at there was nobody at the front gate holding tickets charging, right? And Sukadeva, who spoke the Bhāgavatam, who this Bhāgavatam manifested through, right? He came from a very obscure position and disappeared into a very obscure position, right? So, who was he, right? And that is a great, is a great mystery. But he was a person who was being utilized for this particular purpose to expand on the original four verses of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And then later, Sutta Goswami expanded even further. And that rendition is what A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada and our Gauḍiya Vaiṣṇavas have utilized. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura, who Maharaj mentioned, he was here for 6 days speaking on the Bhagavatam. And his expansive knowledge in relationship to the Bhagavatam, where was it that he spoke for, I think, 3 weeks, or on the first verse of the Bhagavatam? Was it in Bangladesh? It was someplace he spoke for a lengthy period of time just on the first verse of the Bhagavatam. So much is there. So it's up to and again, as I spoke in the beginning, by hearing the Bhagavatam from the lips of a pure personality, then those misconceptions which are covering the jiva are eradicated almost to nil, right? So that's by this regular hearing. So the benefit that we have had as followers of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Rakshakshila Siddhardev, who gave further elucidation on what Srila Prabhupada expounded in the Bhagavatam, we were able to be recipients of that and benefit from that. And if we adhere to then we will also feel within ourselves a loosening of the knots of material bondage and an attraction for hearing more about the pastimes of the Lord and his devotees.
There seems to be a tendency amongst a lot of people, especially in Vrindavan, to skip over the first 9 cantos of the Bhagavatam and go straight to the 10th canto. Can you say something about how dangerous that can be?
Yeah, of course, because one has to it's a step-by-step process. And Ado Shraddha Sadhu Sangha and Bhajana Kriya and Artha Nivritti. So it's a step-by-step process. You can't eliminate the foundation. And the foundation is established by the previous acharyas. And for those who consider that anything within the previous steps is insignificant, is moving towards what we are seeing is the sahajic tendency, making the process very cheap. And we want to get to, as people say, I want to get to the nectar. But it's like you want to get to the honey, but there's a whole process of getting to the honey, right? The bees, they're going out and they're collecting the pollen, right, from so many varieties of flowers and trees. And then they're regurgitating that into the honeycomb. And then the honeycomb has to be, the honey has to be extracted out of the honeycomb, right? So there's a process. You can't, it just does, the honey just doesn't come automatically of its own accord, right? So there's a whole process. So similarly, in devotional life, to come to this level of bhava bhakti, which is the beginning of devotional service in actuality, right? And from that platform, one can actually relish, really relish, the topics of the Bhagavatam. All the topics, all the chapters, all the cantos of the Bhagavatam. Because just like as Gadadhar Pandit was reciting Bhagavatam in Puri, and who is she, right? And her tears are flowing. So what was it that she was extracting out of the Bhagavatam? Right? What was she experiencing? So that is the culmination of the Bhagavatam. But there's a process to get to that stage. Right? So we shouldn't think that it is so cheap making, and this is a problem that we're making this process a very, as we have seen with our Guru Varga, with Bhaktisiddhanta, how many, 8 years? Now, it was 3 lakh of Nam in the jungles of, right? Mayapur is like, what type of austerity do these persons observe? So, if they had to undergo such austerities, and who are they? Who are we? Right? So we examine the lives of these great souls. Our Srila Prabhupada, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Pramod Puri Maharaj, what type of austerities they underwent. And when we hear about them, we can consider that it was not something that they just came to immediately, right? In this lifetime. But to speak of what they had in previous lives, or where they descended from. So like that. But we are having that great fortune due to Maharaj's inspiration to come here to this and understand the significance of this place, right? Which is really, if you see, it's not like a big crowd attractor, at least at this time of the year, right? Which is nice for us, but it plays a very, very significant role in, and that's what Srila Prabhupada gave to the world. He gave the Bhagavatam to the world, right? So, who was he, right? And to think about it, if Sukadeva was speaking and this was being recorded, and do you think that anybody, the person, this meaning the Shrutidar, he thought, oh no, he meant like this. No, we should change this, what he said here. So what would we end up with had that been the case? But it wasn't the case. It was transmitted orally, intact, and expanded upon. but it wasn't changed. Nothing was changed from the...
Vyasadeva himself sitting in the audience of Śukadeva and hearing again what he already spoke.
Expanded, correct. But nothing was changed, expanded upon.
Yeah.
So that, this is where, if we study historically, none of that so-called editing took place, right? But we take it upon ourselves that we should edit the words of...
Over-intelligent.
Right, over-intelligent. Actually, and very unfortunate, actually. Very unfortunate.
The inspired word of the Acharya
Correct.
being analyzed from a grammatical or a scholarly perspective.
Right.
Even the Bhāgavatam says, there's a verse in the Bhāgavatam, that even if there's a mistake in this, it still doesn't matter.
Correct.
If it brings someone closer to the Supreme Lord, even a grammatical mistake in this Bhāgavatam is insignificant.
Yeah. So, and Srila Prabhupada gave very explicit instructions not to touch one comma or colon or period in the Brahma Samhita, right? Which wasn't even Saraswati Thakura's direct work. But it was held in such high esteem by Saraswati Thakura and our Srila Prabhupada not to touch one colon. So that mindset of changing is something that is reflective of Pratishta. Pratishta. It comes under this Kamini, Kanak, and Pratishta, right? This wanting to become distinct, but we're insignificant. And that desire, that hankering for some honor is actually a great obstacle, because all honor is meant to go to the lotus feet of Krishna, Radha and Krishna, and our Guru Dev. Right? Everything is to go to his feet. So these are the anomalies that are plaguing Kali Yuga.